the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Free agency day one. We knew it could be tough, and it has definitely been a tough day for San Francisco 49er fans because the video is titled Comings and Goings, but there's a lot more goings than there are the guys coming in. It has been a tough day for 49er fans to see some of their favorite players heading on to other teams, and we knew this was a possibility. We knew that there was a chance that the 49ers could lose several key players from this, time period in which they made a couple of runs at Super Bowls. And it's happened. Teams around the league value the 49ers players, and they've opened their pocketbooks and they've spent a lot of money bringing those players into their respective teams and cities. And the 49ers really haven't been that aggressive. They've sat back. They've waited. And I think that we were all hoping they were going to make a move or two, and really they haven't. We've seen the top centers go off the board. We've seen most of the defensive tackles go away. We've seen some of the top flight players just sign elsewhere, and the 49ers haven't really done much at all. And we're going to talk about what they did do, but I think that this is a interesting point of view is they haven't really hit any of the star players. It doesn't mean they're not going to pick up free agency and start making moves here pretty soon as we start to get to that second wave. But when you're talking about the type of players that 49er fans were expecting them to go out and get, that players that they were expecting to bring in and make a push for a potential sixth Lombardi trophy in a time period in which the 49ers are coming off a 6-11 season, but have a fourth place schedule and the opportunity to play at home in the Super Bowl at Levi Stadium. I don't think right now it appears the 49ers are pushing for that potential chance of winning a Super Bowl, but things change. And who knows, maybe this new direction they're going is going to come with some more shrewdness, more moves that are more under the radar that have potential big dividends. But they're losing key players at key positions that are absolutely going to hurt this football team. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode, because there are so many players that the San Francisco 49ers have lost today. They can't even get any more comp picks for these guys. You get a maximum of 4, and they're just going to lose so many players. There's not even enough comp picks to come back to replace them. That's how much of an exodus it's been for the San Francisco 49ers on day one of free agency. Now, this doesn't tell the full story. There's a lot more that remains before the 49ers get to that point where their 90-man roster's complete, their 53-man roster's complete, and they get into the season. So it's not as if things are done. But I think when you look at it, you're like, okay, what direction are they going? What are the moves that the 49ers are going to make that are going to improve this football team? Because right now, they're not better as a football team. They're worse today than they were yesterday. And I think there was a likelihood that a lot of these guys were going to go. But let's be honest, the latest one, it really stings. And I'm going to talk about that right after this. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So I have to start with Dre Greenlaw. I think this is the one that was the most unanimous amongst 49er fans. We need Dre back. And then you heard, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they wanted Dre back. We heard that Robert Saleh was adamant about getting Dre Greenlaw back. That's what we heard Nick Bosa said. And then it just kept kind of sounding off that that was the unilateral opinion that they needed to get Dre Greenlaw back. But the question marks were the 49ers willing to go multi-year on the contract? Because Dre Greenlaw has suffered a significant injury. Last year he came back. Boy, he looked dynamite in those 2.5 quarters that he played. But, what was he going to be after that? He missed more time at the end of the season. Everyone knew they wanted him back. But what could he get on the open market? Well, he did get a lot on the open market. He got exactly what he was looking for. Now he's going to be running the shop there with the Denver Broncos because he got a 3-year deal worth $35 million to head to Denver. And so right off the bat, the 49ers have a tremendous hole at linebacker. And, this is one of the things I talked about early on when we've been going over the 49ers' biggest needs. My number 2 need for the 49ers was linebacker. And I got a lot of pushback. People said, no, it's offensive line. It's got to be O-line. And I agree O-line needs to be improved, right? We see that there can be an improvement at center. We didn't have a left guard. We'll talk about Aaron Banks in a second. But now linebacker becomes a drastic need because this is what I said. If Dre Greenlaw moves on, the cupboard is extremely bare. We got D. Winters. D. Winters is phenomenal when it comes to helping in coverage. He'll do a great job with that. He's actually better in coverage than Dre Greenlaw. That can't be argued. The problem is, how's he going to play against the run? It hasn't been great so far. I think that he's a good player. I think he's got a lot of upside. My question marks about him are, is he ready to roll right now? So we'll see what the 49ers ultimately do. Maybe they go and get a kind of, B-class free agent to kind of plug and play in this type of role. But it looks like it could be D. Winters' time. It looks like it could be someone in the draft. And we know my feelings on a guy like Geog Campbell. It might be a way to go. Talk about Demetrius Knight, another guy later in the draft, Chris Paul Jr. Those names become potential options for the 49ers. But replacing Dre Greenlaw is not going to be easy because Dre Greenlaw is ingrained in the 49ers defensive mentality and defensive philosophy. That linebacker that plays the will spot, that can stop the run, cover running backs, run with tight ends, and be an imposing figure over the middle. He's just not going to be there anymore. So how do you replace that? That's going to be the question. And I think that linebacker becomes a big struggle now because you have, I get it. You didn't want to have to pay a 3-year contract to Dre Greenlaw. There was reports he wanted to run his own shop. Maybe that's the case. Maybe you never really had a real shot of bringing him back. But now you have to figure out how to replace him. So that's one of the goings for the San Francisco 49ers is Dre Greenlaw is no longer going to be the will linebacker. 57 is no longer going to be hunting over the middle of the field. He's no longer going to be bringing that energy to this 49ers defense, and they're going to have to figure out a way to change it up. There's going to have to be somebody else that steps up. And yes, Fred Warner is still the leader of the football team, and he will still lead this next generation. But there was an enforcer role that was played by Dre Greenlaw. They do not have an enforcer right now. Now, Malik Mustafa is a heck of a player. He comes with physicality, but we'll see how the 49ers replace that now. Robert Saleh has done a good job of helping the 49ers find and develop linebackers in the past, and it looks like he's going to have to do it again. We'll see what happens. Maybe something else will happen. We'll keep our ear to the ground and see if anything happens, as things come along. But it wasn't just Dre Greenlaw heading to Denver Broncos, but also the 49ers starting safety Talanoa Hufanga goes to the Broncos as well. He signs a 3-year contract worth $45 million. So just between the two of them, Denver shelled out big money, $80 million between Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, and both of them are now going to be residing in the AFC West. And a lot of attitude, a lot of physicality heads to Denver. And the 49ers, I think it was probably more universally thought of that Hufanga was probably going to be moving on. But the thought was if Hufanga moved on, you could probably keep Dre. But that's not the case. Both guys are gone and leaving, huge holes in the 49ers defense. D. Winters potentially steps up at linebacker. There were reports that the 49ers were okay with Jair Brown stepping in place of Talanoa Hufanga. I don't think the film suggests that is how they actually feel. So maybe they'll still go another way. I've been talking about Julian Blackmon for a while, and the Colts just signed a safety today. So there could be an opening for Julian Blackmon to head to San Francisco and play for his former coach in Gus Bradley and fit into a system that he definitely fits in San Francisco. And the 49ers almost signed him last year. So there still is a possibility the 49ers could bring in another safety to compete. But right now, there's a hole left by 29 not being there. And I think we can all agree we're going to miss Hufanga's energy. We're going to miss his humility, the type of player he was. I mean, it's tough watching guys of character like Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, guys who give it their all, put their body out there on the line for the football team, see them go to another team. We wish them well. Huff and Dre are two of my favorite players for sure. Huff, one of my favorite people. Just the interactions that my personal family has had with him. We all really like Talanoa Hufanga. So this is a tough one, man. It's going to change the 49ers safety room for sure. It was thought that they were going to get cheaper. I don't think they could afford $15 million for Talanoa Hufanga. So the same way you start addressing the draft and you look at players in round 1, round 2, round 3 at linebacker, you do the same when it comes to safety. And I know it might seem a little too rich, but you got Malachi Starks, you got Nick Emenwari potentially in round 1. It doesn't mean you don't go there. They would still be cheaper options. Hufanga, $15 million. Nick Emenwari or Malachi Starks at 11 at $5 million. You can see the affordability of it. The 49ers, it looks like right now, are getting younger and trying to get healthier. The two players we just talked about, both have had season-ending injuries over the last couple of seasons. So just something to remember, but it is definitely frustrating. And I wanted to keep Dre Greenlaw as much as anybody else. I mean, I really did. And if I had my way, we would have kept Huff too, because I do think Huff is just a tremendous individual and a really good football player with great instincts. But the 49ers didn't feel that juice was worth the squeeze when it comes to these guys. And I don't know if maybe, when it comes to Greenlaw, it was just, hey, I want a new scenery. I want to go somewhere else. I want to run my own shop. And if that's the case, maybe the 49ers would have offered the money that he wanted. But he doesn't, and he moves on. So that's two defensive starters for the 49ers, and it ends up being a third as well, as Charvarius Ward leaves and he signs a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't think this one surprises people either. You signed Diamondre Lenore last year, but Huff's comments after the season talking about his personal loss, which I won't comment on. I mean, the guy can make whatever decisions he wants after what he went through. And Charvarius Ward, another one of those guys that I have great respect for. Personally, just a great individual. He was really nice to my wife and my godson, so he's fantastic. I think that Charvarius Ward is worth the $20 million. I'm glad that he got it on the open market. But the 49ers are losing now 3 defensive starters in Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, and Charvarius Ward. That's a lot to make up. Now, they did start putting in place potentially doing that, right? They drafted Renardo Green last year. They've developed Diamondre Lenore into a consistent starter. He got the big money. He's going to be taking over on the outside as the number 1 corner for Charvarius Ward. Renardo Green is stepping into his best Diamondre Lenore role, and they've got to continue to build. And so I don't think it was surprising that Charvarius Ward went on, but it definitely was a little bit disappointing because I think we've invested so much as fans into Charvarius Ward because Mooney is really one of the most unique and cool players. You listen to his conversations after games and his press conferences. Really a cool dude. So we're seeing these high-priced players going out the door. And this is a little tough to see as, there's a lot more goings than there are the guys, signing back with the San Francisco 49ers. But Charvarius Ward, I wish him and Hufanga and Greenlaw the best of luck, but it leaves more holes. And right now, I think we feel comfortable with 2 cornerbacks for the 49ers. They need depth at the position. Darrell Luter Jr., we're not sold on. Yes, they got Tre'Davious Hodges. Not sold on him. As far as Tomlinson, not sold on him. There's a lot of things that have to change there. So we've got to get a little bit better when it comes to that. But those were the defense right now, guys who left. And it's a lot. And that was already after missing on DJ Jones, who re-signed with Denver for $13 million. Imagine that. They've got DJ Jones, Dre Greenlaw, and Talanoa Hufanga, a former 49er on each level of the defense, which is kind of interesting. DJ Reed went to Detroit, so that didn't happen. These are defensive players the 49ers could potentially be interested in. Paulson Adebo goes to the New York Giants. It's $18 million per year. Definitely priced out of the 49ers range. He's gone. So you just consistently saw these guys. Puna Ford goes to the Los Angeles Rams. He gets a good contract. It was consistency with these guys getting big-time money, and money's being spent like crazy out there right now. And, I mean, the 49ers, ex-49ers just today have signed for $258.5 million on the open market, right? That's the entire salary cap. The 49ers could not sign all these guys. It's just what it is. I think we all would have liked to have had 57 back. I think that's one of the keys, but that's a lot of money. But it didn't end there because the 49ers also lost 2 offensive linemen. Aaron Banks got a crazy contract. I had heard, that he was the 3rd best interior offensive lineman on the market. Some said he was the best. Well, the Green Bay Packers paid him like he was the best in the interior offensive line. He got a 3-year deal that's going to pay him $77 million with $63 million of it paid in the first 2 seasons. Wild. This dude is getting paid out $19.5 million per season. There was no way the 49ers were going to pay that. They weren't even willing a few years back to pay Laken Tomlinson $13 million per year. They definitely weren't going $19.5 million per year. So Aaron Banks moves on to Green Bay. He goes to a similar system to play for a coach that runs, the same scheme, and he's going to be playing in front of Jordan Love. So 49ers lose on the offenses with a starting guard. Now, with that being said, they have prepared for this. So they drafted in, the last couple years, a lot of guys that can compete at the position. Number one, Dominic Pooney is going to play right guard. That frees up Spencer Burford to play left guard potentially. Burford did not have a good season last year. In fact, his really good season was his rookie year. Since then, it's been kind of hit and miss for the young guy. I think that a lot of people aren't sold on Spencer Burford, and that's fine. He would have been the day one starter at right guard last season if he wouldn't have broke his hand, allowing Dominic Pooney to step in. And don't get me wrong, Dominic Pooney deserved the position. We all know that I was a huge fan of Dominic Pooney from the jump. But Pooney, right guard, Spencer Burford in competition with Ben Barch at left guard. I don't believe that this is a huge drop-off from Banks to Barch or Banks to Burford. And the reason I say that is because Banks was struggling to stay healthy. When Banks was healthy in 2022, he was phenomenal. He was really good. His lateral quickness was on point. He was athletic enough to get to linebackers and make the blocks there. He could pick up the stunts and the blitzes. He did a good job. Since then, we've seen inconsistencies, and a lot of it is because of injury, whether that was a calf or a shoulder. There's been lots of things that have hindered Aaron Banks. So getting somebody that is a little bit younger, a little bit more athletic makes sense. So Spencer Burford definitely has the athleticism. We've heard Chris Foerster talk about the fact that he's the most talented of the offensive line group, even more talented than Dominic Pooney, which is crazy to think because he's never shown the consistency, which is what Pooney has. But also Ben Barch, I thought, did a good job in the limited reps we've seen him last year. I think he's improved mightily since getting to the 49ers. So they have 2 really cheap options at left guard, which made it easier to move on from Aaron Banks. And you can see the 49ers were trying to prepare for these situations, right? Dyer and Malik for Hufanga going. D. Winters and Jalen Graham for potentially Dre Greenlaw going. Renardo Green for Charvarius Ward going. You just seen it, Aaron Banks. Now you got Burford and others, and Ben Barch. They've been trying to prepare for this moment because they know you can't pay everyone. You can't pay $256 million on the open market to keep all your players. It's just not possible. And so Aaron Banks moves on, gets a massive contract. Congratulations to Aaron Banks. A Bay Area, resident. He deserves it. And I'm very, I always say you're worth whatever someone's willing to pay you. So he's worth $77 million over 3 seasons. Congratulations to him. Jalen Moore, the 49ers swing tackle. And it was interesting. Yesterday I was on with Mark and we were talking about Jalen Moore and we were talking about, the news that he was the 3rd best tackle on the open market, which caught us by surprise. But I had actually said this way back when we were putting together building the 49ers. And I said, I thought that there was a chance that a team would really fall in love with Jalen Moore and think that he could potentially be a starting tackle. And if that happened, it would price the 49ers out. But what was interesting is yesterday I just threw out a name. I just said, hey, yeah, I think the Chiefs might like Jalen Moore for $15 million a year. And honestly, I didn't put that much thought into it. I knew that they had moved Thuney. I knew that they were talking about moving Kingsley Suamatia into guard. And I thought to myself, wow, maybe Jalen Moore could be the starting left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. And lo and behold, guess what? The Kansas City Chiefs signed Jalen Moore to a 2-year deal for $30 million and $15 million per year. So Moore moves on, and the 49ers have to now make a decision at swing tackle. So they have different ways they can go about it. They can sign a veteran. I do believe they'll probably sign another veteran at some point. I don't think it'll be anyone of real, big name. I think it'll be somebody a little bit of a lower level free agent. We've seen them do this in the past. Guys like Brandon Parker, like Charlie Heck. Like, these are guys they have. Austin Pleasance is on the roster. These are now contenders for swing tackle for the 49ers. Not guys that you feel as comfortable as Jalen Moore backing up Trent Williams. So it could put a little bit more emphasis on the 49ers addressing offensive tackle in the draft. I do think that there are players you can grab that are universally talented enough to play multiple positions. I think a guy, like, I've been consistent about this for a while, a guy like Donovan Jackson makes a lot of sense. He can plug and play at left guard if you want competition there. And if something happens, you can kick him out to left tackle. We've seen him do it at Ohio State last year, and he was comfortable. You could also go with one of the top flight offensive tackles. I don't know if Armand Membu's going to be there, but Calvin Banks Jr. in round 1. You get him, you bring him in, and potentially he plays left tackle for the 49ers if something happens to Trent Williams. So there are going to be options. I like some of the later round options too. When you start talking about offensive tackle, what about a guy like Anthony Belton? We'll see how athletic he is, if he's athletic enough to play in that scheme. I think he is. But you're talking about a huge, massive man who can move a little bit. His 10-yard split's pretty good. And that could be a guy that, you go ahead and you draft him, and he becomes your swing tackle, until potentially Trent Williams moves on, and then you stick him at left tackle and see if he can develop. But that would be, a round 3 guy. Pick 75, Anthony Belton. It could be a potential option for the 49ers. We know I like a guy like Chase Lunt later on, but I think Belton is more ready to help now. And if we're talking about somebody in the future, there's a lot more guys that could be developed. But if you need somebody to plug and play now as your swing tackle, I like a guy like Anthony Belton at NC State potentially. So, Charvarius Ward, he goes. You get Aaron Banks getting the huge contract. You get Jalen Moore getting the huge contract. And then a couple smaller contracts on offense right now. Joshua Dobbs leaves and goes to the Patriots. He gets $8 million to go and play for the Patriots. I think we were kind of considering him being gone. And then also Elijah Mitchell goes to the Chiefs for $3.5 million. Kind of shocking that he got $3.5 million considering all the injuries that he has been dealing with so far. So, 49ers lost a lot of players so far this offseason. They would be getting a max 4 compensatory picks right now. And, they're all going to be high. I think right now, with all the numbers that I've seen, they would be getting 4 fourth-round picks or better. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of guys that they can go ahead and potentially and get. So, guys going out and the guys coming back in, well, the big signing for the 49ers so far is tight end Luke Farrell. And I don't think that was on anyone's bingo card. That wasn't on my bingo card. But if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I've been consistently saying that one of the biggest holes for the 49ers in the run game was the loss of Charlie Warner. And so the 49ers needed to get a blocking tight end. When I did my video on tight ends available for the 49ers, these are the type of guys I talked about. Now, I did not talk about Luke Farrell. He wasn't on the radar. I was talking about guys like Mo Alley Cox, and I was talking about guys like Tommy Tremble. Tremble got $8 million a year. So he signed before he ever even hit free agency. Maybe the 49ers would have went Tommy Tremble, who was still 24 years old with a lot of receiving upside. But instead they go Luke Farrell. And he's not much of a receiver. He's more built in the Charlie Warner role. He's not as physically imposing as Charlie Warner, but he's pretty effective when it comes to run blocking. And the 49ers knew that they were missing that extremely during the season last year when they were having a little bit of problems on the edge with Eric Saubert and Braden Willis and those guys not being able to make the block. So they turn their attention to Luke Farrell, and they give him a 3-year deal worth $20.25 million. A lot of money, $11 million guaranteed. But I don't think it's ultimately shocking that they paid the money for the tight end position. I think it's more shocking to people that they paid the money, to this particular player, to Luke Farrell. Because last year they were willing to sign Brock Wright away from Detroit, and they were willing to pay him more money than this. So, yes, the $11 million is probably a little frustrating for most as they're looking at guaranteed money, but we don't know the structure of this contract yet. So this might hit the 49ers real low. We don't know, if it's $11 million, when is that money going to hit? How is it going to be spread out? How many void years are going to be built into this? There's a lot of things that go in. This might be a very friendly contract for the 49ers. So I don't want to comment on the validity of the contract and how it's structured until I know how it's structured. So, I do see that people are upset about this signing because of the players that you lost. And I think that's a normal reaction. It's like, we lost some really good players, and then we pay this guy that money. We could have gave it to Dre Greenlaw, and I get that 100%. But the 49ers did need to get a blocking tight end, and I get it. The draft is a talented tight end room, at least towards the beginning of the draft. But there's not that many guys that are successful blockers that are coming out from the tight end position. Plus, we've seen the 49ers struggle to hit on tight ends in the draft besides George Kittle. George Kittle, Charlie Warner, that's about it. Everybody else has been a real struggle. So they're just making sure that they're getting the guy that they have to get to make this run game going. And it's going to be Luke Farrell. I think it definitely surprised me. I did not know very much about Luke Farrell. In fact, I'm still looking into Luke Farrell, so I can't comment too much except for the stats that I've seen. I watched a little bit of video of him to get a feel. He's a technical blocker. He does a good job. He's not physically imposing, but he makes his plays. He can get to the second level. He is a improvement from Eric Saubert last year, and so they get tied in too. And this will prevent George Kittle from having to stay in and pass block. So George Kittle can now go out for passes more. We all wanted George Kittle to be more effective in the passing game. Well, now he can because Luke Farrell in 2 tight end sets can stay home and block. George Kittle can go out for the passes. And I think that's a win-win situation. Should also help Christian McCaffrey be able to get some extra run lane. So that was really good. Defensive tackle Kevin Givens is coming back to the 49ers. This is according to Matt Barrows on a 1-year deal. And I think this is almost a necessity at this point. I think Kevin Givens right now becomes the second best defensive tackle on the 49ers roster because I don't know what's going to be with Malik Collins. If Malik Collins stays on the team, he's the number one. But I think Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott are pretty close to each other. Kevin Givens did have moments last year where he was good, 3.5 sacks. He is not a guy that's good against the run. He struggles against duo blocks. He gets pushed back pretty consistently, but he's a penetrator. He's a guy in the backfield. He knows the system, and he's a player that they developed. So this is a guy that got as an undrafted free agent and developed him into a consistent backup defensive lineman. So they needed depth, and they got depth. This can't be the overall answer for this football team, right? Kevin Givens can't be a starting defensive tackle for the 49ers moving forward, but he can be a rotational piece who competes with Kalia Davis and competes with Evan Anderson. And if you told me that, next year you went into the season in 2025, Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott are your 2 rotational pieces at defensive tackle with Evan Anderson, and then maybe 2 fresh starters, I would not have a complaint about that. If you tell me that Jordan Elliott or Kevin Givens are starting, I'm going to have some struggles with that defensive line being good enough to help the 49ers. And the linebacker room is going to need even more help with defensive tackle. And like I said, there's guys out there. There's guys that the 49ers could possibly get. There are also a tremendous amount of draft picks that I am huge fans on that I break down over on Patreon. I broke down Derek Harmon. As soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to be posting that over on Patreon, and you can check that out. That's a first-round talent and a beast out of Oregon. So he's one. There's also videos on Walter Nolan, There's all kinds of videos on Omar, Norman Lott, and others. So head on over to Patreon. Check that out. 49ers Cutback on Patreon. Link is in the description if you want to check that out. 49ers only had one more signing today, and that is Patrick Taylor, who signed a one-year deal to come back to the 49ers as part of, this reported by Tom Pelissaro. So the 49ers lost Elijah Mitchell. Potentially they wanted to bring him back. They bring in Patrick Taylor. So your running back room has depth, and when you're talking about players, they have a decision to make on Jordan Mason that has to be made by Wednesday, whether they're going to tender him a contract. My guess is that it'll probably be a second-round tender on Jordan Mason if they decide to tender him. If not, they could potentially trade him. That's going to decide a lot. If you go into the season with McCaffrey and Jordan Mason and Isaac Garendo and Patrick Taylor and Israel Abanikanda, like these guys can compete. You draft a running back and you're just fine. There's enough depth there. If Jordan Mason gets traded, the 49ers probably need to address the running back room in some way to get more depth, because I don't really want Patrick Taylor being one of those guys that contributes to this team consistently as running back 2 or running back 3. I want him more as that special teams potential player. So I get it. Some of the things the 49ers are doing are filling out the roster. You still have to get to 90 guys. You have to be prepared for training camp. And right now, the 49ers seem content with waiting this thing out and being very strategic with who they get. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe day 2 will yield a different type of conversation. But right now, it's a lot of guys going out the door and 49er fans feeling a little unsettled. And I think that the one that hit me the most was Dre Greenlaw. When Dre Greenlaw, officially signed with the Denver Broncos. Of course, it's not official, but agreed to terms with the Denver Broncos. That one hit a little bit different, and this is going to be one of the tough ones. Dre is one of the true 49ers in every sense of the word. We wish these guys nothing but the best in the future, but the 49ers front office has a lot of work to do in both free agency and the draft to be able to replenish this football team and be able to compete in the NFC West that is seeing Seattle and Los Angeles and even Arizona to a small degree getting better. And as of right now, the 49ers haven't got better. They've gotten better in one area only, and that is backup tight end. They need to address defensive tackle. They need to address linebacker. They need to address safety. They need to address corner. And they need to address wide receiver at some point in some capacity. They haven't done that. And of course, everyone, we all know, they need to address offensive line unless it's going to be Jake Brendel. And right now it appears it could. So, interesting day of day 1. Of course, it's not over. There could be more stuff that happens just at time of recording. There wasn't. So we'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be something big that happens for the 49ers, and we can all talk about it tomorrow. I'd like to thank you all for coming by and checking out the episode. Really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you believe that I deserve it. I really appreciate it. Listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.